Okay, so I just want to start just to make sure that you're okay with being obviously broadcasted to others on YouTube and also Twitch. And if anything slips up or leaks on your end, it is completely not my fault. Are you okay with that? Wait, really? Are you joking? You're joking! No! Oh dear God.
Hello?
I think it's working out, right? Boys? Can you give me a response? Quick. There we go. Okay, nice.
Nice. Anyway, yeah,
I'm
I
so
agree that
sorry.
if I say something horrible, it's my fault.
All right. As customary on the DD2 interview section, I'm obligated to ask you this very interesting question. Are you ready?
I'm prepared.
All right. Fuck, marry, or kill. Dismiss,
Oh my God.
men at arms, great robber, go.
Wow. It's a hard-hitting question. I don't know that I want to have sex with any of them, to be honest, because they're make-believe in a way. So
This is all for a joke, but if you don't want to answer it, that's okay. We can skip to the next portion if you like.
I'd feel bad killing the man-at-arms, but I don't want to marry him or be with him intimately. So I guess he's got to go.
Okay, so men at arms gotta go. All right, so we're killing off men at arms.
And I'm probably more interested in the grave robber than I am in Dismiss, so I guess it would be a Dismiss marriage.
all right, we got to hear, folks. Now we know. All right, well, thanks for answering that absolute horrible icebreaker of a question. So
There's more ice now than there was before you asked that.
All right, I'm sorry. Okay, so I want to first to talk about the game overall. So I've checked on the Steam profile pages before, and it was basically talking about how DD2 is a roguelike game, and there's been a little bit of controversy in terms of amidst the community about that. So in your opinion, what do you currently identify DD2 as, and what are your visions of the game genre you expect DD2 to be in?
Well, I don't spend a lot of time thinking about the exact delineation between roguelike, roguelite. I think that it matters to some people, and for categorization, I guess it can be important, but for us, we just view it as like a sort of a set of features or values or influences, and then we pull from those as needed. What's more important to us is the structure of the game delivering on the kind of like creative goal that we set forward. So for Darkest Dungeon 2, it's a road trip,
Right.
And instead of establishing yourself and building up a base or a community, and investing in one area, and there's a series of like mechanical and thematic choices that roll out of this idea that it needs to be a road trip. So like it would be crazy to accumulate wealth in a game like this. If you're driving across the country, you want to carry as little as possible, essentially. So we don't really agonize a lot about whether like which end of the like where on the rogue spectrum we are, but we like to think of the game as being uncompromising, and so we'll take things away, sometimes on a coin toss, oftentimes through lack of planning or preparedness, but we're willing to have the game punish you a little bit. We're definitely really like for Darkest Dungeon, permadeath, and I know that it functions a little differently now in Darkest Dungeon 2 because you don't have like a 10-15 hour investment in that one character. For Darkest Dungeon 1, that was really important to us, was that you were sort of playing high stakes poker in the end game, where you're playing with your most valuable assets, and if you lose, they're gone, and it hurts, and it creates a lot of intensity, and that's great. So, but we wanted to just try a different approach this time out, because it does kind of suck if you wipe your best party, and that represents like X number of hours, and those are all gone. And if you want that experience, you can get it from Darkest Dungeon 1, but we wanted to try something that still stings, but it's a little bit more permissive this time out.
Yeah, so that's another interesting thing as well, is that like I was very curious about the build up in terms of how every single region is short, medium, long in terms of like region 1, 2, and 3, or 2, 3, and 4, and also how one single full run per se to reach the end boss is like 6 hours. So it feels as if every single like run is very individual. It's specific to that specific act boss per se, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's the whole thing, and I think I remember in another interview they mentioned there's like the whole loop aspect of it that you guys want to recreate as well, right? Something like that.
Yeah, I think it's neat to. It's just we're trying to explore like the excuse me, the characters from a slightly different angle. So instead of like managing a huge giant roster
Right.
and picking and choosing and a sort of like cruel capitalist kind of value structure that the first game had, where you just treat people as disposable means to an end. This way, it's like, well, this is all you've got, and I understand that it feels more limiting, but I like that. I like that you're like, okay, I'm in a coach with this guy that I don't get along with, who's got some bad quirks, that's problematic for the team, and I have to somehow, leverage that as best as I can, or willingly sacrifice him. But it's not as easy to do that in the second game, and you might actually just crater your run if you start getting really creative with offing a party member. So I think the challenge, in Darkest Dungeon 2 kind of comes from living with people's difficulties, which is, thematically tied to the whole idea of relationships.
Ooh, that's another question that we're going to ask a little bit later on. But before we delve into the deeper details, I have another question regarding, I think you mentioned something about punishment. The whole idea about punishment in this game, I really like that, where if you're like, what I noticed the most about playing this game myself is that being more proactive, understanding, memorizing every single little step, every single little nuance definitely helps me in preparing every single situation, and I don't get punished because I'm prepared for it, right? So in terms of that, upon reaching quote unquote maximum knowledge on this game and such, I feel like I don't get punished as much, and the game's difficulty definitely decreases on that. And that kind of segues into my next question as well, is where do you see like along the line in terms of difficulty for this game? Is there like a certain win rate, loss rate that you kind of expect to have for this game, for players at least? Or
well, I mean, I've kind of watched your channel. I know you're like a highly technical player, and so you unpack and track a lot of the stats, every skill move and how they interact and stuff. So I think we want to build a platform essentially, and I'm not trying to give an evasive answer at all. But we wanted to create something that was a little bit more accessible than Darkest Dungeon 1 in terms of like when you hear it takes 80 hours or whatever to beat the game. It's a big turnoff for some people. The content of that 80 hours, I think, is like really at its best, in the first kind of 25%, and the last 30% of Darkest Dungeon 1 is really the sweet stuff. Like, it's fun to get up and running and get your Hamlet underneath you, and then it's fun to make those big assaults on the Darkest Dungeon. But the game kind of lagged in the middle. There was a big kind of trough where you're kind of just grinding. You're trying to get more loots. You're trying to bring up your whole roster. So anyway, I think that, for DD2, we wanted to do away with that sense of trough and really try to cinch the trepidatious beginning with the kind of, big bombastic finish on each run. And in terms of difficulty, we have a lot of sculpting left to do, where I don't necessarily think all confessions need to be the same difficulty. We might explore some onboarding, where the brain is an expected win, essentially. And because we want to get people into that loop and feeling the kind of some success early on, so that they are more armored up for the challenges to come later. So there's a lot we can do there. The base game should be tough. Darkest Dungeon is tough. It's part of what it is. It's a difficult game. Knowledge should be rewarded, though. So you should have an easier time if you know what's up and you invest in understanding the game systems and how they interact. You should have an easier time than somebody who just YOLOs their mouse clicks. But that said, that's why we want to really lean in and begin developing more Infernal Flame mutators and stuff, so that players they're really invested in the details and who may be like capped out on challenge after playing for the bulk of early access. So players maybe exactly like you,
a little bit too many hours, some might say.
Okay. But yeah, there's an increasing skill ceiling that you can kind of aspire to, and that's always fun. When I get a game that I really like, I enjoy upping the difficulty, at pace with my skill, so that I'm always feeling like just a little bit vulnerable, but somewhat confident. There's like a really nice sweet spot there when it comes to games, I find.
Okay, so another thing that you mentioned earlier about Infernal Flame, is that something to be expected amongst all like, are all players expected to play with it, or is that purely like a...
No, I think, like I said, we're trying to make a bit more of a platform. So if it's something that you enjoy, and I can't spoil anything, but I will say that, we have a lot of ideas for expanding what the Infernal Flame does and giving people more control over the type of experience that they get with it. But it isn't like, if you're not playing on Infernal, then you're not a good player, or that all players should be shunted to that experience. I think it's like a parallel track for people who have had some, consistent success in the sort of default difficulty settings, I guess.
Yeah, because in comparison to DD1, where you had like, a gradients of difficulty, in this game there's only essentially one mode, and that's I think that's rather interesting as well for for everyone to have like the same experience. And yeah, and in regards to Infernal Flame as well, right now it's in a little bit of a controversial spot as well, where some people like to argue that Infernal Flame is considerably easier than normal Flame, just because you eliminate one of the most key resources, which is Flame, a very nostalgic resource, if you will, from DD1 as well, right? So do you have a stance on that, or do you have any thoughts?
I think, at early access, or like when we introduced the Infernal Flame, it was meant to just be a sort of our first pass at getting like a difficulty mod in. And it kind of echoes like Torchless from DD1, but obviously Torch functions very differently in the second game. So I think that, like, I'm not ready to hang my hat on the current version of Infernal. I don't think anybody is. And we've got a lot of ideas. I know Tyler, design director, and my business partner is got really passionate about trying to blow that out a little bit more. So we're going to see, what we can do there, so that it's not just like numbers get harder, but there's a suite of options. The dream is there's like a suite of options to affect your difficulty in different ways, and kind of create like an interesting experience for yourself.
I love that. That sounds amazing. Another quick question that I have is that currently the only, once you max everything out, obviously a lot of players in early access, I assume, don't have everything maxed out, so they're still in the process of unlocking everything. But for those who have unlocked everything, could we see something besides memories in terms of something else that we can invest our hope into, or is that just going to be it? Is memories kind of like the only standfast that we have at the end of our journeys?
Well, I think, internally we've talked a lot about like what would be kind of like a grand slam run of the game, which is to like take the same 4 characters, beat every single confession, and memory them up kind of as you go, and declare kind of ultimate victory that way. It's tough for me to say, because we're never at a shortage of ideas, and so I don't want to like promise things and then not have things come to fruition on a timeline that matches expectations, but want to make sure that there's definitely compelling reasons to keep playing once you've maxed out your altar. The same way people kind of found some joy in continuing to play once their Hamlet was fully maxed out, in Darkest Dungeon 1. And there really wasn't much to incentivize that, but it grew over time. So when we added districts, for instance, that kind of thing, it created more kind of resource sinks for people. And I think that's kind of one of the, like, we're huge fans of early access at Red Hook. Like, it's always been, something that we've really, like, an environment that we've enjoyed working in, and we've gotten a lot of like really fantastic feedback. But the risk is that the feedback over time, things that are important to someone who's played 100 hours of the early access version of the game are less important from a development standpoint, because we have to remember that the bulk of people are going to play it starting at 0 in a couple 3 months or whatever. So we have to make sure that there's enough teeth in the end game that we can, build on. But we also have to make sure that the game, onboards nicely and welcomes kind of that new glut of players when it launches.
I see.
So I mean, I know you had a ton of questions about hero balancing and all that stuff, and it's like it's burning a hole in our combat designer's pocket to get to that stuff. For sure.
I can imagine. Yeah.
Yeah. Because we all, we don't believe in a flat balance. I'll say that. We don't want all heroes to just feel equally powerful. What
about regarding paths, for example? Like I like to advocate like Grave Harbor Wander all the time. I like to say that, you know, Pick to Face, that's like one of the best abilities, man. You guys gotta try it. All that kind of stuff. But I feel like the more so dominant perspective is that paths are just simply a raw upgrade to how you play the game and such. And should paths be seen like that? Are paths exactly going to be seen as exactly just a raw upgrade?
Well, I think you're seeing an evolution of that feature. I think, you know, when it launched, they were assigned randomly, and the idea was that you just kind of have to live with what you get, and that promotes kind of different play styles, because you're like, oh, my Grave Robber is Nightsworn this time. I can't rely on all the blight or whatever. So, you know, we got a lot of feedback saying, hey, the paths are great. We want to be able to pick our paths. So we implemented that, which of course opens the door to why aren't the paths balanced? Because if I could pick them, why would I ever pick the one that isn't, you know, my favorite, or the one that I feel like is best balanced or most OP? So the paths feature has kind of evolved over the course of early access. And I think with the Vestal release, we've given people kind of a look at where we'd like to take them, where they actually mutate the functionality of the skills, as opposed to simply slapping a bunch of buffs and debuffs on top of them. So again, I know James is desperate to get to that stuff, and
yeah,
you know, we kind of feel like internally we want to move the rest of the roster up to that level and function, you know, in the same system. But this is the work of making a game. You know, you kind of like frame the house, and you know, I know there's people walking around in the street going like, you know, when's the crown molding coming in? But, you know, we got to get the plumbing and electricity and, you know, make it habitable, and then we can start decorating it and making it look nice. And so it's just kind of working through these iterative passes and learning from the community what resonates the most, and just our own feelings, and then, you know, building in a direction that we feel like will be appealing. The Iron Crown molding. Yeah.
So for example, in regards to Vestal, her paths are probably like the most diverse. They're so interesting. Every single one of them genuinely feels like a new character, right? I think it seems like to me as well, that seems to be the evolution of all the paths. Instead of just increasing stats here and there, or making, you know, like a little bit of a increased damage, or, you know, higher health but no res or something like that, like Vanguard Man at Arms, for example, it seems to have evolved quite drastically different, giving her a debuffing route, a healing route, and a stunning route, I believe, on Vestal, right? And that's rather and so we're essentially going to be expecting that for other paths, is what you're kind of saying, Legend towards, or
yeah, that's where we want to take them.
That's awesome, because I've been loving this update in terms of her. I've been loving how I have to think differently every single time when I play her, or change her paths and all that kind of stuff. That's
I think that's really the best. That's the best version of this feature. Like, you know, even just, I think the clearest example of it is just how she gains conviction being different per path, or you know, between the paths. That alone is just really interesting. You know, if you've got to think about putting her in harm's way versus just running out the clock to gain conviction, it's just a different mental calculation, and I really love how they implemented that. So
yeah, because I definitely do some weird mental gymnastics to argue the versatility of certain like abilities sometimes, and this definitely makes me just go absolute nuts in there. So I definitely love the new different types of diversities that we're bringing to paths.
Right.
So memories are actually another thing that I wanted to go about. Memories currently kind of force a player to familiarize themselves with the surviving heroes, and this comes with the drawback of not being able to change their paths, quote unquote drawback. Obviously, we get to play the same heroes, they maintain their quirks, we can lock in a Jinx Man at Arms, so that could be absolute insanity, right? And that could obviously be seen as an extreme a buff, but unfortunately, if we're just stuck with Vanguard Man at Arms or Searcher Man at Arms, we're just quote unquote stuck with them. What is your opinions, or what is Red Hook's like stance on being isolated to one path with memories? Is that something intended, or are we, you know, expected to experience a little bit of all of them later on?
Well, the idea with the memories was that by surviving, you know, that instance of a hero becomes less archetypal and more specific. So you know, kind of the way it was pitched and talked about between us was you shouldn't even be able to change their name. Like that's who they are now.
Right.
The path, the quirks, the name, they're locked in. And we thought that was kind of a neat thing, because if you took a hero type through a boss and did well, it's kind of neat that they become more of an individual for you because you've invested that time in them, and you could kind of move them through the process of every confession. So I don't know, I'm not going to say today if we're going to let you swap paths. It would mean, I think it would mean us rethinking a little bit about how we expected the memories to play or to work out, or what our sort of like creative goals with the memories were. If it's to create an instance out of an archetype, then I don't know if it's appropriate to switch paths. Although I totally respect that people would like to keep the buff and keep cycling the different paths based on whichever confession boss or whichever thing is next. But kind of going back to what I said at the outset, like a big part of this game is making do with the kind of the people that you have, the 4 people that you have. And I don't know, there's something kind of compelling about, like, I really like this guy, I'm gonna put him back in the coach. I know he's a suboptimal path for this boss, but I really want to like increase his memory capacity and go from there. So we haven't made any decisions there, but that was kind of the creative impetus for the memories, was to kind of bring back that sense of individualism that you earn over time.
I think my perspective on paths may have been skewed a little bit as well, because having everything unlocked constantly, right, and having that essentially that freedom, I think my perspective has been skewed very differently from not viewing as an individual, but as just a means to an end. So it's
because you're in like creative mode at this point. Like you put enough hours in. And so what appeals to you is the maximum number of sandbox options, because you've spent enough time enmeshed in the systems and the numbers, and this is kind of what I was saying about early access feedback over time, is that what excites you is the zero restriction maximum creativity within the play space, right? Like that's the most exciting prospect for somebody in your position, or some of our like extremely experienced kind of early access players.
I just feel so
that can be really overwhelming to someone who's just starting though, right? Like if you're like 10-20 hours in and you're like, I gotta pick all this stuff and I don't know, there's so many, that might be a lot. So we have to just be careful about how we roll that stuff out and make sure that we create enough options to keep our high end sounds kind of weird, but our very experienced players interested in this space, but not alienating kind of people who are loading up the game for the first time. And I think having the the platform of the Infernal Torch is a great way to explore that. We've got a lot of ideas about future modes and things like that we can kind of throw at it, but our goal right now is to drive to that 1.0 kind of release and focus our energy there.
So I want to transition now a little bit more into the mechanical like stuff in the game. Is that all right? So I want to ask. Sorry, I don't know why. Anyways, but what I wanted to ask about, this is obviously something from DD1, but what was the main decision to transition from afflictions to relationships at the beginning of the development of this game? Obviously, you kind of answered it already, but like, could we see a return of the old DD1 mechanic or no?
I don't think we're going to do afflictions in this game. It's a sequel, so there's 2 people. So there's one person in an affliction, there's 2 people in a relationship, and I kind of like that. It's an affliction times 2, and it kind of fits that it's the second game in the series.
Fair enough.
And again, it's like, I like the idea that I've gone on a few road trips, and that was a big inspiration, for us talking about this game. And I like the idea that it's less about the individual and more about the group dynamic that emerges, between individuals. So I think that's really what we're trying to explore a little more with this game than we are like personal stress personal like afflictions or stress related breakdowns. Because quite frankly, we did it. I don't know what else we would do that wouldn't feel like just a slight tweak on what we did in DD1, and I'm not sure that it would resonate as much. You know, if it felt just jammed in as yet another system in this game. You know, if you could have a personal affliction, you could also have a relationship, and you can also have stress and memories and all this stuff. I think it just becomes kind of soupy in terms of like the design goals. You know what I mean?
For Act 2, I want to talk about specifically about the seating side here. Act 2 had a lot, and I mean like a lot of balance changes throughout the early access, and especially when we're removing the soft centering exhalation, which is like, you know, you destroy both breaths, but it still does something, at least it deals a little bit of damage. What was the main decision to remove that? Because like there were so many different changes, right? And removing that big aspect, or in my opinion, was a big aspect, because even though it was an AoE attack, it doesn't deal that much damage or stress, but it could still crit, it could still, you know, trade or take those defense dodge tokens away interacting with Seething Sigh. Is just like, what was the philosophy behind that decision? I was just wondering about.
Well, unfortunately, I'm kind of the wrong guy to tell you the exact specific thinking around like granular changes like that.
Okay.
That's definitely our combat designers kind of area.
Okay.
I will say that, you know, both the Seething Sigh and the Fault, the Act 3 boss, have seen, you know, their share of tweaks and adjustments, and that's just really kind of us embracing the kind of the early access environment. Like, we have a closed testing pool, we run it by those people first, get a general sense of things, make sure everything's up and working, you know, but they're very, you know, experienced and proficient at the game, and so, you know, we're getting kind of feedback from people who are craving a real challenge, or, you know, who really want to be kind of smacked around a little bit, and so we try to balance that with, you know, what we know historically in terms of how difficulty should land, or what, you know, boss mechanics feel cheap, or that kind of thing, and then we roll it out and we kind of gauge the reaction, like on Discord, Reddit, and we kind of see, you know, look, it feels like, you know, the completion rate is low, but the vitriol is high, you know. Like, we try and take these different metrics and then adjust for basically the type of experience we want to get out of the boss. So I love the big cleaves that the eyeball does. I think that's awesome. I think it should feel scary and really accelerated, and you know, like it's a lot, you know, getting slammed by those hits, you know, every round like that. And I understand that it's frustrating for people, and I'm switching bosses on you, I know, but that's an example where, you know, we felt like that was appropriate coming out of kind of the pre-phase, which was a little bit more puzzly. For the Psy, you know, we did some changes where the back lung, because we recognized that we didn't have enough skills that would target the back. You know, the back lung needed to have less HP if it was going to be, if it was going to encourage players' participation in the puzzle aspect of the boss. It couldn't be as tanky as the front lung. So things like that. Now, if we adjust the character roster and we bring in another character that can hit the back really, really reliably, we might go back and revisit that change, because suddenly the reason for that change is no longer valid. And that's really kind of why it's kind of scary to be really put on the spot in terms of commenting on individual changes when it comes to balance, because it's really a big ecosystem. So, you know, you can approach a balance problem so many different ways, and I think the back lung is kind of indicative of that. You can either add a new hero, or you can reduce the hit points on the back lung, and there's always, you know, plenty of ways to come at solving a problem like that.
Yeah, I could just imagine like the different types of balancing things that you might have to do over there, because sure, the easiest solution, which is changing currently what you control, that might be the simplest thing, but, you know, we don't take in consideration of trinkets. And Grave Robber, I like to bring this up as one of the best examples of, she's been often times seen again as the quote-unquote weakest character of the Link and such, but I always advocate for her, and I always, you know, give some praise to my girl Audrey, because with the introduction to a variety of different trinkets and such, it immediately increased her playability, her versatility as well. For example, even with the most recent update, the gain on crit thing to stun, I forgot the item, the sticker, the pig sticker, I think, and also the bow mallet, they both play around, you know, the utility of crit and stealth and combo, which is purely her. And with the more introduction of all these different types of trinkets, I could definitely see how even just one small aspect can completely change the perspective that one might have on a character, and yeah, it just shows the complexity of balancing.
Absolutely. And I mean, we don't really want to achieve a smooth balance. And Tyler spoke a little bit about this last Monday when we did a Next Fest stream. But a flat balance is really sterile. So we use the term like spiky a lot internally. That was kind of what led us to the bounty hunter decision. And that you could conceivably have a character that is kind of a little bit low performing, natively, but the whole hook is you got to go out and get items for this character and then take them over the top. And so over the course of a run, if properly itemized, the character actually flexes pretty hard towards the end of the run when you need them most. Is that character worse than a character that's stronger out of the gate but that doesn't benefit as much from itemization or interacting with other systems? I don't ever want to be able to say, because that's that spikiness, right? Like,
I think, yeah, I love that as well.
Things functioning differently. So, I mean, yes, we there's a huge appetite internally to do take another look at paths, take another look at balance, and it's something that we're going to be doing on an ongoing basis, even well after launch. There's no question, because every time we add a new hero to the roster, we have to think about what that does to the player's potential suite of options, right? And suddenly we may find that there's too many of X type of skill, or too few, or we've got to buff some things or nerf some things that we didn't have to think about doing, a few months earlier. So we definitely want to make sure things are in as good a shape as possible, but we're never chasing balance as like this holy grail. We want to make sure that every character has their moment or their set of circumstances where they really shine, and make sure that those moments are not so situational that you rarely see them, but that they are, exciting, and you can feel good as a player because you become aware of them, you learn how the character works, and you can really extract value when you need it most. If I could rant a little bit longer on this.
Oh, sure, yeah.
I would say that poker was a big influence for Tyler and I coming up with the first Darkest Dungeon, and again with this one. It's just kind of like it's a great game. And the way you win consistently at poker is that when you're losing, you don't lose as bad as when you're winning. You win more than most. So you're trying to get the most value when you're ahead and lose the least when you're behind. And that kind of philosophy, I feel like, has trickled into the Darkest Dungeon games, where when things aren't going your way, you shouldn't expect to somehow come out on top. You should just not get your ass handed to you so badly that you can't bounce back. And when things are going your way and you've put together like some nice group synergy, or you've trinketed some heroes like really, really well, that's when you should really try and push and steamroll and be aggressive to make up any ground, and then some that you might have lost when things were kind of flagging. So I think subconsciously that's kind of worked its way into how we think about the game structure a little bit, and how we think about hero power, monster power, itemization, that kind of thing.
There's something truly beautiful about that I want to encapsulate on the concept of on heals. I literally talk about the philosophy of running behind on heals, where if you're consistently being damaged, you're just constantly pumping out heals on PD or whatever characters it may be, right? And you're not thinking about actually finishing the fight or killing the end game objectives. Even at the most micro levels, I feel like it sets a great precedence at all different levels of the game. Maybe I'm super weak against this lair boss and I have to set myself behind. That means next one, maybe do I go for survive because my team is so weak, or should I try to take that risk, maybe lose that one character? And that risk judgment is very similar in poker. That idea of risk judgment is, I think, one of the reasons why I'm so good at this game as well, is I feel like I've experienced all different levels. And yeah, I truly love that part about DD2, and I'm glad you brought that comparison up with pokers. I feel like that's one of the most, that's a very interesting comment, because I feel like I've been always trying to find the perfect word to describe what it's like to get behind on DD2, and I think that's a wow.
Yeah,
so
and getting behind, we're kind of trained, as game players, that like low health is inherently bad and requires your immediate attention. But we're sort of trying to explore, with Darkest Dungeon 2, a little bit more of like keeping your being a bit of a leader, it requires you to keep your eye on
the gutsy,
end
right?
goal.
Yeah.
You know, and so yeah, you know, you might throw a character under the bus to get through a layer fight, lock up the trophy. You know, somebody's
Act
waiting
3.
for you. You know, because your other relationships are great and it's not the end of the world. You can cope with it, or you may just allow your health to kind of tank and just heal to keep off death's door for a tough fight, knowing that you're going to heal on the road. Then you can look for a hospital, or you can, you know, and so the idea that, you know, health is really just fuel, and you just need enough health to get to the destination at the end, right?
Yeah,
like that's, you only need exactly that amount of health across your 4 guys.
but yeah, like even on like Act 3, I could definitely see that aspect as well. As that, like, do I try to meticulously plan and intricately focus everything on one specific unit and pray to God that he holds or she holds for like X amount of turns until my entire team gets wiped, or do I just satisfy myself with these 2 characters and just pray that one of them holds? You know what I mean? It's that like juggling of numbers or chances, I suppose, in risk management that's so beautiful about this game, and that's why I love Act 3 as well, personally.
Nice.
So oh yeah, there's another quick question. Again, this is probably going to be going to your, you know, the battle, the combat guys, I suppose, which is the token system in itself is inherently one of the most prominent features in DD2 compared to DD1, right? Where in DD1 is just raw statistics and numbers, right? In DD2 we have a visual representation of the increase in damage and decrease in such. Obviously we still have the damage trinkets that increases by the numbers, but there's also, you know, weaken, vulnerability, and block tokens in existence. Another question that I have is in regards to specifically crit and blind tokens. These 2 tokens kind of are the outliers where they don't necessarily have an exact transaction, yet play very vital roles, especially when the boss has them. For example, in Act 1, 2, and 3, even if the enemy has blind, the core mechanic skills such as Sunray Exhalation and Limerence could still hit through regardless of blind, right? It's a very unique, touchy tokens. I don't know what to exactly say. Do you have any knowledge of that, or do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, okay, so the token system itself, I think, is a great refinement in our combat.
I love it.
From DD1 to DD2. I think it's one of those things that you know, not only makes the game more approachable, but really actually enhances the sort of level of tactical depth and mastery required. If it's just a soup of numbers, it's daunting for early players, and it's really finicky for experienced players, and it kind of actually just gets in the way of really the tactical decision making, which is what we want to, you know, encourage people to do. So the token system is great. That said, signature kind of puzzle fights need to still work. If you can just, you know, there's a range of cheese that is awesome, like, you know, putting bear traps on highly mobile characters, and you know, locking certain parts of a multi actor boss down so that it doesn't quite function exactly, you know, like all of that stuff is great, but the fight still has to remain structurally intact. And so I think that's why you'll see sometimes these exceptions to things like blind or crit or whatever, that where they just kind of would cross over into the realm of it just kind of silly, like not really a challenge. You can break the fight. So we want players to be able to figure out a leg up. We want players to feel really smart and outwit the game, but we don't want the game to look stupid. So like there's this line where like you can poke a lot of fun at it, but we don't want the game to come off as just you know, completely trivialized by you know, leaning in on one single token or like the specific mechanic at the right time. So it's a bit of a balancing act though, because there's no, I'm speaking high level, but there's no right way to do this. There's no proven or performant way that this is accomplished. It depends on the boss, depends on the characters, depends on the types of tokens that the boss needs, and I think that's why, you know, you've seen over the development of the game, we've added more like unique tokens to the bosses so that you can clearly see this boss is doing something unique to the boss, and there's no, you know, there's no straight counter, you know, to it that's in the hero toolkit, and that really allows us to kind of be clear about like, no, this is kind of a signature mechanic, we need this to work, or you're not gonna have fun. We want you to have fun. We want to knock you around, but we want you to have fun.
To be fair, I just thought it was thematically correct to, have blind tokens to be played on the eyeballs, but
Yeah.
I digress. Hospitals is a touchy subject. Hospitals at the moment are one of the highest priorities that I in terms of nodes that I go to. It has the ability to remove quirks, diseases, items, and it provides a lot of big game fight items as well, such as holy water and restorative herbs for Act 3. Like, what is the end goal with all these different nodes? Because it makes horrors and inns so much less significant, at least in my eyes, right?
Yeah.
Is there like a reason behind it? What is the philosophy in that design?
I think, again, this is a bit of an early access evolution, and actually our item designer is currently kind of working through the refactoring kind of the types of loot and things that you get from each of these different points, like the inn, the hoarder, the hospital, right down into even to the encounters on the roadside. So
right,
I think there's definitely a case to be made for, maybe it's one of those things. We can reduce the power, the scope of inventory that the hospital has, increase the cost of treatment, reduce the frequency of hospitals, and it really just depends on what our goal is. Do we want them to be this like glorious thing and finally you get one? And in which case we just dial down the frequency of hospitals and be super rare, and you'd have to plan your whole route around getting to the hospital. It may be that hospitals should have a smaller stock of items, and really their value is in healing and
recovery,
quirk treatment, recovery,
yeah,
disease healing, that kind of thing. And they're not so much of a shopping mall. And we lean in on the hoarder for that. So we have a lot of like options for that kind of thing. Excuse me. And I think what you're going to see over the next milestone, and then probably on release, is some changes in terms of some or all of those dials. I hate being so vague, but I don't want to put anybody in the hot seat in terms of what exactly is going to happen. But we're aware of the value of that node, and there's just a lot of different ways to approach it, and how we end up approaching it is going to be kind of dependent on some of the other moving parts in terms of how we want to differentiate the acts and that kind of thing.
Yeah, another question I have in terms of nodes is obviously the hero shrine, right? Obviously, Vessel kind of revived the usage of that a little bit, but aside from that, afterwards, just leave it as a mastery point. Is that kind of like will that always just be what's going to be for the hero shrine? Just be seen as a mastery point once you have locked everything, that is, or will there be something else?
It's a great opportunity. I think it's one of those things where it's sitting in the game right now as like, once you've maxed everything out, its value plummets. So, but there's value in a safe node too, by the way. Like a free mastery point is not awful if your other choice is like a cult fight or whatever. So if you're trying to just move through, does the hero shrine always have to be the most important node, or is it appropriate that its importance falls off after you've completed every shrine for every hero? And I guess that's kind of goes back to that whole like spikiness in design philosophy. I think it's okay that some things are more valuable at certain stages of the game than others. And if we're talking about somebody who's just going to fire up the game tomorrow for the first time, they have 10 characters times 5 shrines each. They have 50 shrine visits before they start wondering why there isn't a ton of value in revisiting those nodes. Now that said, is one mastery point the absolute best version of a repeat visit to the shrine that we can possibly come up with internally? I mean, no. But it exists in the game, or kind of it's over here, and it's certainly something that we could explore doing more with. And when we feel like it's a good time to move on that, we can investigate it.
So going deeper into the concept of design philosophy as well, where you talked about how some things are just quote unquote more acceptable early on in terms of its introduction to the game itself, is there something like that for the regions as well? Because to me, at the very least, I feel like to most people as well, there's definitely a big difference in between something like the Tangle compared to the Shroud enemies, where Shroud is just filled with an abundance of tokens, high-end damage, and even the boss itself is recognized as one of the hardest in game. And Is
It's
there,
so cool though. Oh my
it's
god.
so cool. Yeah, I love it too. But like, what is there any reason behind it, or like, does Red Hook recognize the difference, and is there any purpose in having that difference?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, yeah, we definitely recognize the difference. I mean, the Shroud is the only environment with a like a meta condition that comes and goes, and there's been some great moments I've seen people playing where the fight is going poorly, and then the fog rolls in, it goes even worse. Like that's pretty great to see. um, and then the other environments don't have that, and it's definitely a spikier region. But again, like we're getting better at making this game. The longer we work on it, and the Shroud is the most recent pack of enemies. It's the most recent biome itself. I think it looks fantastic, and so it's a little bit like the Vestal's path, coming up into this kind of new path system championed by our design team. Yeah, we probably have some work to do to catch up the rest of the characters, and there's definitely room to take a second look at some of the other biomes. Again, though, the goal wouldn't be to flatten them out. For instance, like the ignited mechanic and the sprawl is really cool. We might just enhance the burst damage coming off ignited people and leave it at that, and just say, okay, the sprawl is really scary because when they blow up into fire, you're in for a real hard time. And that's kind of the hook of that region. I'm speaking hypothetically. I can see everybody saying, please God, no, in the chat. Yeah. That's fine. Everything I'm saying about specifics in this area is totally hypothetical. But we want the regions to feel different. I mean, early on we talked like we want the feeder to feel like everyone has got a lot of health. Like those fights are like slugfests, right? So that's kind of fun because you get a lot more chance to pull off combos and really get clever with your token play because the enemies aren't dying quite so quickly. So there's a lot we can do, and we want to like investigate this and like I said, bring that second pass and kind of the wisdom that we've accrued over the past year plus in early access. And that effort is going to be ongoing right till launch, and it's not going to stop after launch. Like we have content and feature ideas that we've just earmarked for post 1.0, for instance. Not paid. We're just going to continue to improve the game. Certainly we'll do some DLC if the sales warrant it, but launching the game on Steam is really just the beginning of the game's kind of life.
Yeah, that's why I'm so excited for this as well, is because I've seen how the game has evolved since day one, right? And all these different changes, all the different issues that I've had in the game, they either have been addressed or improved, and that's always like something really fascinating to see.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing, like making a game of this scope, because it's a bigger game than the first one, even though sometimes it may not, feel it. It's incredibly dense, and we have to focus our efforts on the things that are the most falling the most short of their targets. And it means that sometimes we have to make tough choices about where to assign our resources. We don't have limitless money as a studio, and we don't have limitless time as human beings that are all slowly dying. And we don't have limitless staff. So it's not like an EA. Like I used to work at a studio in town called Propaganda, and they were owned by Disney. And we would joke like, well, we'll have to put the money hose on this, which is like, we'll hire like 5 more people, just solve the problem with just, bodies, right?
Wow.
But, at Red Hook, we're a boutique outfit. We really like being boutique. We don't want to change that, and we don't have the resources to just sort of say, okay, you know what, you 10 people are the region differentiation sub team, and you get a producer and comfy chairs and a snack vending machine, and you guys can just live in that world for the rest of the project. So we have to make tough choices, not just like a Darkest Dungeon player, about where to allocate our resources and when to push and when to kind of say, well, it's not exactly what we're looking for right now, but we're going to have to pursue a higher, more important goal, at this particular time. So that's what drove our overhaul of the progression, like the metagame. That was always like a placeholder thing. Look, we just need an XP bar for right now when we launch. We can't get to it before we launch early access. But we did a huge sweeping blowout of that feature over the summer. Relationships, same thing. We took a shot, kind of falling short, not doing exactly what we wanted them to do, but we didn't want to rush a fix because we really wanted to think about it. And so it was important but not actionable until late last year, and I'm pretty happy with where they ended up now. Obviously, tuning and tweaking and that kind of thing is going to be a forever thing, but it's a vast improvement over the previous system. And so now we're focused on traversal and kind of the experience of moving from node to node, and we've got some really awesome like ideas around that. And that's kind of our third like hot button issue, in addition to augmenting content, overall polish, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I was literally just like talking about how even the stress heal animation and stuff like that is like, it's so crisp. It's so crisp.
Yeah.
Oh my god! And when you guys introduced, I don't know if you guys remember this, but tokens used to be so sluggish. Oh my god, these trigger one at a fucking time, right? Now they all go out once. Oh my god, you don't understand how much time I've saved.
I don't understand.
I'm loving it so
I don't
much.
understand. I understand perfectly. I totally agree.
Sorry.
But you get the thing up and running,
Yeah.
and you go, okay, well, we need time for them to bark. We need time for the tokens to pop, and the programmers build all of these systems and give them a beat and a pause, and you get it out, and you're like, okay, it works. And then you start hunting for ways of improving and optimizing. You're like, okay, cut the half-second delay here, shunt this up, pop everything together, and we learn, and we've always wanted our combat to feel really good. Like, I want us to be the studio that knows that is the absolute premier studio for clicking your mouse. Like, when it comes to clicking on something on screen, we're the best. And to make sure that clicking experience feels good, we need to be really smooth about the rest of combat. And so yeah, we've continued to just iterate in the background. It's not a feature, it's not something we shout from the rooftops, but if you play the Epic Store early access launch from a year and a half ago now, compared to this version, yeah, it's like night and day. But that comes with like playing with the toy you built and then learning how to build it better as you play with it.
Yeah, right. So now that we're going over like the whole quality of life changes as well, I have a question to ask. This is kind of selfish, but I need to know, will there ever be some sort of like game progress tracker, kind of like a compendium of sorts where you can take a look at like past runs and such, kind of like DD1's weekly updates?
Wow, we wanted to have the academics journal, and you could see all of the monsters and rotate around them, and it would like unlock the monsters, and it's a great idea. Yeah, bestiary, like history of your runs, all that stuff. That's a big feature though. And is it more important than getting a metagame progression?
Yeah.
Yes. No, it's not. Is it more important than overdoing the relationships again? Probably not, because you have to experience and live with these relationships like every single time you play the game. So it gets moved down again. Is it more important than the Vestal? Well, no, it's not more important than the Vestal. And you can kind of see how time goes by, and this poor feature is just like hanging in at the number 5 position, like hoping to claw its way back up. But there's a huge amount of appetite internally to do something like that. And this guy right there that you can't see is Kevin.
Hello.
He's our lead modeler, and he's been pushing for like a 3D bestiary since like the second hour he was on the project like 5 years ago. He's like, yeah, and it'll be so awesome. We'll definitely do it, right? And I'm like, yeah, we definitely will. And we're 3 months away, and I don't know, we're not going to get that in for early access launch, but it would be amazing, and it would be like such a cool thing to do. If the game is out and performing well and people are enjoying it and playing it and buying it, then there's really no reason why we wouldn't embark on something like that.
I would love that. So obviously the Vessel just got recently released, and she is another character from DD1 that's kind of imported into, or exported I suppose, into DD2. And I want to talk about Runaway a little bit. She's like the only quote-unquote original DD2 character. What are some of the, I just want to ask, like, what were some of the reasons as to why not just bring everyone from DD1 to DD2? Why did we decide to add just one specific Runaway character in here? Is there any like reasons behind that?
We introduced fire as a damage over time in this game.
Yeah.
And so we needed an evangelist for that mechanic. We kind of have Plague Doctor sort of leading the Blight charge, Hellion, among others who are real bleeders. We needed somebody who jest or two. But we need somebody who really kind of embodied the fire damage over time, and we just didn't have anybody to cover that role
Wow.
from DD1. And it was a really cool opportunity to bring a new character into the cast. But I'm really, as a character designer, I'm really proud of the cast of Darkest Dungeon characters, and I don't just want to throw a cliche or something expected into the mix. So it had to be a character that really espoused the values of DD2, and we had like fire archers, and you got a bow, and then they dip it in oil. But we've seen all this stuff before, and it's not to say it isn't cool, but the idea of some, orphaned younger character that's like picking their way through the ruins of this like world, and then also has the fire component, just felt like really appropriate and kind of encapsulated a lot of the aesthetic and thematic values of Darkest Dungeon 2. So I feel like she has a real strong reason for being there. I'd like to introduce some more new characters, but we've also tried to make sure that we bring back a lot of the favorites, because exploring these characters in greater detail was really a huge reason why we wanted to do another Darkest Dungeon game. We wanted to spend more time with these guys, so if we tried to introduce an entirely new cast, it would really run counter to that desire. So that's why we're bringing back some favorites, and we're trying to throw some spins on things like the bounty hunter being kind of like this rare but overcharged character, the antiquarian coming back as an enemy because she was really evil. I sort of in my mind, she's like the leper is the best of them, and the antiquarian was the worst. Morally,
like the flagellant returning as the quote-unquote enemy of Vessel's story as well, right? That was rather interesting.
Yeah, that was really fun. And we get a little bit of a look into maybe the flagellant's past, and maybe there's some questions that are raised by virtue of that, and I'm looking for, we have a few other kind of fun ideas in the mix that hopefully will catch people a little bit off guard. That's what I love to do, is make choices that are maybe even a little jarring sometimes, but ultimately the experiencing of our creative decisions and watching people work through them, and I think is a real joy for us. And I think it's part of the fun of the game, is we try to be uncompromising in our gameplay and really kind of bold in our decision making. Just like killing your characters at the end of the first game with the one click move. I was so proud that we did that. I thought that was really cool.
So, I mean, obviously, I'm pretty sure you can't, exactly say which characters you're going to bring back specifically, but it definitely seems like, a majority of the cast from DD1 is going to be brought over, right? I think everyone's just praying right now for the good old, original duo, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, I am always every day up to date on Reddit and Discord. So every morning I wake up, and then as I'm having kind of breakfast in the morning, I review Reddit from the night before, and then when I get into work, I scrub through the Discord chat and just kind of try to get a sense of like what's really pissing people off, or what are people talking about. The 2-week period where people were arguing over who they'd rather bang, the ancestor or the countess, was like hilarious and mind-boggling.
Oh, so you're knowledgeable of it. All right, that's
okay. No, I watched the whole thing unfold, and I was just like, oh my god, I love it.
All right. Well, hopefully you didn't say my username in there, but anyways,
but yeah, it's I know people really want the Crusader back. We've been aware of that for some time, and that's all I'm gonna say about it.
Okay, all right. That's awesome to hear. So I want to go back to the whole Runaway thing as well. So Runaway is currently pretty much, as you mentioned, obviously, he's the only character that like specializes in the whole like burn thing, right? Aside from PD, 90s, and Rain. But she's literally the only character that really utilizes burn trinkets and such, and relies on the sprawl, in my opinion, quite significantly. If I don't hit sprawl as Runaway, I'd feel terrible. I'd feel not as powerful. Remembering how you mentioned, their characters who are kind of like, she's in a spot where I'd say she's like mediocre to good-ish in the beginning, but definitely gets exponentially stronger with, you know, different types of trinkets being introduced to her. But it's very difficult to bring a runaway into the burn region when the librarian has 200% burn and the books has low burn res and all that kind of stuff. Do you plan on combating her difficulties in regards to being kind of like a sprawl slave and obviously being quite weak against the librarian?
Well, again, it kind of falls in that bucket of like ongoing tuning and balance and stuff. And again, I don't mean to be evasive or anything like that. But I would challenge you and say, is that so bad? Is it so bad that if you want to play the runaway, you want to factor in visiting the sprawl at some point? Maybe you don't want to face certain things. Like, I feel like that tension between hero choice and environment route choice, and when you're going to actually push on a layer boss, all of these are essentially your risk calculus. And you know, you were shouting yourself out as being like really great at handling risk. So I feel like there's a lot of gold to be found in that tension. Now, that isn't to say that there's no work to be done on our side. I'm not trying to explain away.
I think the way that you described it was
satisfying.
Was perfect.
Yeah. So it's like we want to always find we want to live in the place where there's always a case to be made. ... You know, there's a case to be made that if you're going to pull the runaway, you should definitely hit the sprawl first. You got to get these trinkets. You're going to be, you know, like, that's kind of neat. Maybe the sprawl slave thing is not the worst thing in the world for that character. Maybe it's hitting too hard right now. Maybe we need to make a few adjustments. Maybe we need to shave that down a little bit so that she's advantaged by having visited the sprawl, but it's not required. So there's room for us to tinker with it, but I wouldn't say that that's inherently an awful situation, full stop. You know what I mean?
I think this also kind of goes into Bounty Hunter as well. I like to see him as kind of like the golden boy of every single place where, if like, for example, PD, okay, she does well in most places, but in the foyer, her blight, her aggression in the Foider is definitely dimmed down. So maybe sometimes I sub in Bounty Hunter instead, and similarly like Bounty Hunter for Runaway in this case. My other question is, could we see a return in additional characters being like, could there ever be a more like exchange of different characters while at the inn and such, or is that like something that's not planned?
Well, again, I think this speaks to kind of the maximum playground, maximum sandbox size kind of bias. Like that sounds like a really great like creative mode kind of thing where you can just switch out your party for the most optimal party for every region, and really kind of have a lot of chuckles and joy at outwitting the game because you're I'm coming up on the feeder, I'm gonna drop the plague doctor, swap in whatever somebody else. So there's space to play there. Okay. I don't know that we want to take that away. I kind of like that she's disadvantaged in that region. I think that it's like, if you're like, okay, I really want to play with her, but I hope I don't have to choose the feeder, but then you really like the biome goal for completing it. You're like, okay, well, I could probably carry her. All of these kind of, this risk mitigation kind of thinking is really where we want to be, quite frankly.
Okay, wow, that's very insightful. Thank you. So also I want to talk about the Altar of Hope a little bit. So how do you like the gacha system in the Altar of Hope, the quote-unquote gacha system, where you just kind of like hit the button and see the little thing roll and get a little dopamine rush if you hit something good?
Yeah, I don't know.
You like it?
Yeah, I don't know. It's cool. It's kind of fun.
Is that something that you expect to be be the same until release, or do you think not necessarily the experience bar, but rather how we unlock characters, how we go from the past to maybe some random buffs and then they're a random trinket, something like that? Could we have something potentially like that, but for the overall trinkets in particular?
I don't know that we're going to revisit that. I think, like, I will say it's tranched into pools, right? So you unlock from a set pool first, and then as you complete your unlocks in that sort of clustering of items or trinkets or whichever you're drawing from, then you move on to the next one, so that you can't and there's a little bit of fuzziness between them, but it is really just a different presentation. Like if we just did levels where you pull, there isn't really much excitement because you know exactly what you're going to get when you get it.
I guess, yeah.
Which, you know, I again, our goal is that you make the best of a bad situation, or a situation, or the situation you find yourself in. So, you know, reaching into a black hole and yanking out 5 items, and that's what you get to start the run. It's kind of like more in line with our philosophy than specifically shopping and unlocking per item exactly only what you want. So it's kind of one of those things where, like, do I want this feature in every single game I play? No, but if our goal is to incentivize you to make tactical choices with kind of imperfect information and permanent consequences, and make the best of the situation you're in, I feel like it is kind of an appropriate way to approach it. You know what I mean?
I actually, now that I'm like revisiting that question myself and asking myself, did I enjoy that? I loved it. Now that I think about it, it was so fun selecting the trinkets to be like, okay, so what can I do with this mashup of a squad and the trinkets that I have on hand, right?
Yeah, how far can I take these guys?
Yeah, it was the creative. I think the one of the reasons why I fell in love with this game is because the creativity levels just kept growing in terms of like what I can do. You know, I ended up having like a 12-speed Hellion taking the eyeballs, or like the, I don't know, just like whatever, some weird situation that may arise with the different resources that I have on hand, right? Obviously, that's like kind of a sandbox like scenario, but it's still fascinating to see all these different types of strategies come into play just by purely discovery, asking, hey, why not do this? You know what I mean? And I love that part. I think that part is so important, and why I encourage people to try out. Hey, you know, like, sure, you can play with the healer, but you know, you could try not to. But yeah, so I also want to ask about, this is also just something that I'm curious about. In other roguelike games, now that, you know, we kind of communicate about the, you know, taking in the golden aspects of other games and putting into GD2, there's also something that's been really interesting where, you know, once we completed all the acts and such, is that going to be just the final, will that always be something that we're just going to keep playing? Is that going to be the replay value of GD2 in
terms of like choosing a boss,
going at it? Yeah. Is that always just going to be like the end goal? Will there be something like, what I'm trying to lead to here is like, will there be some sort of like, I think you saw this question as well, will there be a daily challenge with, you know, weird modifiers or weird starting teams and situations? Like, would we have something like that?
We definitely have a lot of ideas for that kind of stuff. We really want to get there. I think at 1.0 it would be unrealistic to expect that we'll have a fully featured kind of you know, grindable expandable end game all set to go. I think, you know, 1.0 is going to bring the remaining 2 story acts and a lot of other cool content and stuff that'll be fresh for veteran players as well as people who are just starting out, and from there there's like a huge desire internally to start exploring like daily or weekly runs, or, you know, that's kind of the beauty of this game, is that it's set up to really have kind of a limitless expandability. So personally, as Chris, I think it would be awesome to look at the title screen. Here's the weekly run. If you score X number of candles or higher, you get this like special thing added to your game profile, whether it's cosmetic or it's a trinket or something, like. And it's like, I don't know, it's 4 biomes of the feeder, like, go. And you have to bring the plague doctor. I don't know. But I think like stuff like that, where it's like an evolving challenge for the community, would be great. And I think, you know, our thought has always been that, you know, we would approach this game a little bit more like a live op kind of thing. You know, that's our goal, is to maintain that connection between the players and the game and the studio, so that, you know, we can enjoy you guys enjoying it, and continue to think of like new ways of polishing and improving and expanding the game experience, you know, as it's being played. So that's definitely like our hope, you know, as a within our shop, you know.
So I'll just I'll end this off with one last question, which is I really need to know this because I want to work on a lot of mods too. And has the shift to 3D animation either helps? Do you think that would help streamline the workflow in regards to character creation? For example, like modding, right? Character creation in terms of modding, or do you think that has maybe prevented players or people from, you know, to create mods? Do you think it's a added difficulty or?
Well, I mean, shifting to 3D is more work internally, so it has to be more work for modders. There's no question. Okay. You know, but it yields that's just more exciting to, instead of just the same treatment but with new artwork. You know,
right?
And
yeah.
Also, I was not. Darkest Dungeon 1 represents the body of work that I'm like most proud of personally as an artist. Like I drew everything in the core game of Darkest Dungeon 1, and I'm very proud of that, and it was a big achievement for me. But it was also very taxing, and we could only advance the content as quickly as I could draw. And I've heard streamers lament the fact that, you know, they can't take a day off or they lose a bunch of subs, so they end up chained to this job that they thought they loved, you know, 2-3 years ago, and now they feel like it's kind of like constraining them. I've had some streamers like lament to me kind of privately about that sometimes, and I feel a lot of sympathy for that, because it kind of, you know, it felt a little bit like that for me on Darkest Dungeon 1. Anything we need, you know, we want to do, I have to draw. So we gradually grew the art team to try to alleviate that. And you know, the other reason is I think I could draw everything again better, and it wouldn't land half as impactfully. I think having consumed the first game, people's appetites change and mature, and so switching to 3D, I felt was like an important step for us, because it increases the fidelity and the velocity with which we can kind of develop. So, you know, we get more animation, you know, the anticipation and recovery animations that our animation directors put in, and that was his contribution. You know, I didn't suggest that. It just increased the sense of polish, fluidity. The quality level just goes through the roof.
Yeah,
and we just couldn't do that in the previous workflow. So it looks more impressive. It looks new and fresh and you know, worthy of another look, as opposed to, oh yeah, I played that. It still looks the same.
Wow, yeah.
Now for modding, you know, we're extremely aware of just how vibrant the modding community is. Yeah, and it's amazing. It's fucking amazing. So we want to support them, but like we did on DD1, you know, we didn't encrypt the files on DD1, and after it launched, we slowly began providing tools at modders' requests to augment their capacity to, you know, create mods. And so our philosophy is much the same.
Okay, that's amazing.
We want to facilitate, you know, people modding the game. We want to encourage it. We want to support it. But we have to make the game before we can worry about people who want to change the game that we made, right? So
I think that's the most important thing that you know, I was just wanting to hear, which is the fact that you guys are very aware of the modding community and that you're going to be 100% fully supporting it. I think that's all we needed to hear.
Yeah, and I mean, again, our animation director is like also very passionate about this and has like a proposal to, you know, facilitate the addition of 2D assets into the 3D pipeline and all sorts of stuff. It just takes time, and right now we don't have any, but we will after we launch, and that's like one of the things that we want to start, you know, really leaning into and help that community. The fact that we get so much fan art, that the Steam Workshop is so big, the fact that there's like, there's content of all kinds that people have done for the Darkest Dungeon, you know, universe and cast, and I just want more of that. It's so humbling and awesome. So we want to do whatever we can there.
Yeah, that's, oh my god. Yeah, I'm just so excited to see what the modding's going to be like, because I know it's going to be crazy. But either way,
I mean, the first thing we're going to see is garter belts on the grave robber. That's like, it's going to be the first mod, I guarantee you.
Or probably Vestal. But anyways, thank you so much for being a part of this interview. It's an, again, I want to reiterate how much of it is an honor to be even graced by your presence on our stream, let alone being to interview you. It's an absolute pleasure. And to end things off, I've been truly a lover of this game since literally the day it came out, and I'm just so absolutely enamored by how it has evolved and progressed as a game from day one to all the way now, to see, you know, the introduction of even just combos being a meta thing, or to nerfing crush, and then for whatever the hell reason giving healing, to completely revamping trinkets and introducing paths and all these different ways of playing, and obviously Vestal as well. I've fallen in love with this game, and every single change has not only fixed any issues I personally had, but straight up made the game more interesting and more creative than I possibly could have ever imagined. And once again, thank you so much, Chris, for being part of this interview, and thank you so much again for truly making Duty 2 happen.
That's very nice of you to say. I appreciate it. We don't take anything for granted, and we love the game. We want it to be the best game that we can make. So we're going to continue to do that, and just hope people are there for the Steam launch. And we'd love nothing better than to support the game for years and years. So thanks for playing. And I know there's a couple other players there in your chat. I think I saw Shuffle and British Brat and some others. So
yeah,
you know, it's just nice to have a group of people who are as into it as we are. So thank you.
Hell yeah. All right.
I'm gonna hang up now.
Yeah.
I have to work.
All right, see you later, Chris.
All right, take care. Thanks again for having me.
Woo! Oh my god, fuck. Holy shit, I'm having a heart attack. Oh, fucking cunt. Oh, Jesus Christ. Oh. Dude, I'm about to fucking throw up for how fucking cringe I was in that interview, man. Jesus, I hate myself sometimes. I hate myself. I hate how stupid I can I hate how stupid I can act sometimes, man. God damn. But that was interview with the one and only Red Hood Chris, and wow, yeah, that was learning about all the different types of design aspects and philosophies that he had was very interesting, and I think that could help us as content creators and as players as well. But yeah, oh, thank you guys. I love you guys.